this talk right here was fire. Okay, they're talking about power. They were talking about the transcendence, and we're gonna get about how they talked about God, which was very interesting. But I wanted to play you guys this clip because this was a pretty big bombshell that this lady made. And again, her name is Ayana Hursi Ali, and if you guys aren't familiar with who she is from the new atheist movement that was very popular a couple years ago. Okay, she is an activist. Okay, former politician. She is a former Muslim and was a part of this entire debacle of the new atheism. Okay.
So you, relatively early in your life, you moved away from a totalizing religious view of the world. And I don't exactly know into what you then moved, whether that was a secular humanism, but what I'm hearing from you now, and I believe this is also the case with your husband, is that you have come to a new understanding of the existence of the transcendent per se, and also of your relationship with it. Now, first of all, do I have...
Now, put a pin in that, the transcendence. We're going to do a video on the way they're using this sort of language to describe God.
That right? And second of all, like, is that the movement that you have made, and if so, why?
So I rebelled against a transcendent, a concept of God, of a God that now manifests itself in, the Iranian regime, Hamas, ISIS. That was the God I grew up with. That was the story that I grew up with. I rebelled against that.
So she grows up as a Muslim, and she says, God of ISIS, Hamas. Okay, that's
darkness.
Okay, and she rebels against that. But listen to what she rebels to.
And then when I was bold enough to say, and this was in the Netherlands, I don't want any of that. I didn't convert to Christianity. I didn't convert to another religion or another God. I carried with me this idea. The three-letter word of God stands just for evil. And my best friends became Sam Harris and Christopher Hitchens and Richard Dawkins. These are people I still love and adore. And I think over time, I'm now 53, and so when I was in this state of rebellion, it started for me when I was 32 years old. Over time, I've come to realize, and I wish Christopher was alive today to comment on what we are going through, was we were actually having a conversation about, in my view, the wrong conversation.
We were having the wrong conversation. What does she mean by that? She says, we were having these conversations, and she names 3 prominent atheist voices, but she says, we were having the wrong conversations. Listen to what she says next.
Does God exist? It was the world built in 6 days. Do we believe in fairy tales? And that was the wrong conversation to have.
She mentioned young earth creationism, and then she says, do we believe in fairy tales? She says that was the wrong conversation to have.
The right conversation to have, as I said earlier, was to compare what we as human beings, the transcendent that we have imagined and developed over centuries. And so now I can say I am proudly of Judeo-Christian religion without having to waste your time about.
Interesting. So she talks about the transcendence that we create as a society, but then she goes on to say, but now I identify with the Judeo-Christian religion. Okay, listen closely.
Of Judeo-Christian religion without having to waste your time about.
So she says, now I identify with the Judeo-Christian religion. Okay, so remember, this is someone that's a part of the new atheist movement. So why am I showing you guys this clip? Because one of the most interesting parts of this whole conference was the amount of intellectuals, thinkers, philosophers, politicians, entertainers, creatives that are reevaluating the disdain that the intellectuals and the institutions had towards faith and where that got us. What am I talking about? Well, if you imagine what was happening, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, the new atheist movement, the intellectualism, you have folks who are like the Bill Maher, so on and so forth. These folks had their conclusions of a less religious America and a less religious West play out in the public sphere. And what has that gotten them? Got a bunch of nonsense, got a bunch of craziness. And so now they're seeing the reality of a world that's less religious, that they thought the religion was the issue. It wasn't the religion, friends. It wasn't the faith that was the issue in the West. And so now they're dealing with the ramifications of all this. And now she's saying, we were asking the wrong questions. We were asking the wrong questions. Instead of debating about this, about that, we should have asked, what does this transcendence that they use, and how does that parallel to what we know to be good and true based on human flourishing, or however they would phrase it?
I really think that the world was built in 6 days. Do I really believe every word in the Bible? No. But I do believe that that's Judeo-Christian tradition. And what it has brought forth is, those are the values that I aspire to, the values by which I live. I was called...
So I'm not sure. She says she doesn't believe every word in the Bible, and she doesn't believe that the world it was created in 6 days. That's fine. I'm not a young earth creationist. You guys give me a lot of flack for that. I believe the Bible is in the inspired word of God. So I'm not sure if what she's saying is that I have came to theism. I went from atheism to theism. I went from there is no God to there is a God because of the transcendence. Or is she saying, well, the values that we've all come to recognize as good, now I'm adhering to said values because I understand that, like, is this faith from a utilitarian standpoint? Oh, faith is good because it has practical utility? Or is this faith from there is a transcendence, there is an objective, there is a standard, there is a God, and it's not just one that we've imagined that there is a God. I'm not sure where she was at, but the fact that she's saying, as the new atheist, we asked the wrong questions, then I would go a step further and came to the wrong conclusions and played yourself with some of these things. She's not being super clear in my opinion, but I'll take it. I'll take anybody going from there is no God to now I identify with a Judeo-Christian worldview. I think that's the step in the right direction.
A Christian by Roger Scruton in 2008, and I said, Roger, no, I'm not a Christian. And he said, but you act like a Christian.
And there's a lot of the conversations that were happening was, how do you act? Do you, Jordan Peterson would always say, do you believe in God? Well, what do you mean by believe? Well, I live as if there is a God, right? I live as if there is a God. For someone like her situation and the conversations that they're having, like, I would be curious, how much time have they examined with the modern day Christian thought leaders of our time, the William Lane Craigs, right? Those types of folks that are engaging in the intellectual aspect as well as the theological aspect of the faith. That would be my question. But overall, that was the first panel, by the way. So I get to the conference and I take a red eye, which I played myself. I shouldn't have taken a red eye. So I get to the conference, take a red eye, get there on very little sleep, and go in. And that's the first panel I heard. You guys should go really check out this full panel. There's a lot in here about truth and true power serves truth versus serving itself. It was very interesting. It was very, very interesting. So this is the first panel I come in on. And then there's a lot of this talk about the transcendence and the morally good and all these types of things.